Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Bulletproof Hygiene. I am so excited to have you joining us today. I'm very excited for our guest and our topic. And I want to say a couple of you have reached out to me recently on the Mighty Network app. If you don't have that, it's a free app that you can download and join for free. Just look up Bulletproof Hygiene and come join the community. But a few of you have reached out lately and just really been sweet and encouraging about the content and how it's kind of reinvigorated your passion for hygiene. And that is such a gift to me to hear about that, because that is the whole reason I'm here, is to spread the love and the passion for hygiene so that we can take the very best care of our patients. So thank you for sharing that with me. That's really important. And if we've never met in person, let's do that. We have our 2024 Bulletproof Summit approaching rapidly. It is June 14th and 15th in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it is going to be an amazing time. If you've not been to one of our summits, you got to come, but you got to bring your whole team, because that's where the magic happens. So turn your doctor on to the website, bulletproofsummit.com, and come join us before it's too late, because I want to see you in person. I want to do this together in person. So rolling into our episode today, I feel like I need to give a fair warning that today's conversation will be a little uncomfortable. Intriguing, right? But that uncomfortability is purposeful, and I believe necessary for each of us to be able to practice at the level our patients are worthy of and that they deserve. Whether we like it or not, our profession is changing. New research, technologies, products, and studies clearly show that our old school paradigms are exactly that: old school and outdated. I would go so far as to say that scraping and polishing teeth are the least important thing we do. And if that concept makes you uncomfortable, then this is the podcast for you. I am joined today by a fellow hygienist, Lisa Sarrett, who has been practicing for 26 years. Between Lisa's experience as a practicing hygienist as well as a clinical instructor, she has seen a lot of changes throughout the years and understands that staying current and embracing new is necessary for providing the utmost level of care and representing our profession ethically and as a leader. And that being said, she also understands what it takes to do the hard things and get uncomfortable. So Lisa, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you, a fellow OG. Joining me today just to discuss the concept of exiting our comfort zones, or as I like to say, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So welcome, and will you give us a little background and share your journey through hygiene?
Sure. Hello, Charissa, and thank you so much for the invitation to join you today. I love your podcast and the content it provides. It's been so very helpful for me personally on so many levels. So as you mentioned, I started practicing clinical dental hygiene 26 years ago in a general practice. And I was also very fortunate to have found an office where I practiced for 24 of those 26 years. I also thought from the beginning of my career that I would want to be an educator at some point. But I felt like it was important for me to gain experience firsthand and then pursue education. So 10 years ago, I was given that opportunity to be adjunct faculty at our local dental hygiene program 1 day a week, while also still working in private practice. It was honestly the best of both worlds. The doctor I worked for always encouraged me to grow and to do more, and he allowed me this opportunity to pursue education and still work in his practice. So I was part of a growth-minded team, and I was also surrounded by growth-minded faculty at the college. So within both of these circles, though, through the years, I have definitely been pushed out of my comfort zone many times.
Yeah, I bet. And I feel like any hygienist who's listening that has kind of been in the 20+ year mark, we're probably all feeling the same way about that. We've seen a lot of changes come through. And before we kind of really dig into this, I want to kind of define what is a comfort zone. So the definition of comfort zone is a place where one feels safe or at ease, a settled method of working that requires little effort, and this is important, and yields only barely acceptable results. We don't always think about that part of it when we're thinking about comfort zones. Another definition is a situation in which you feel comfortable and you do not have to do anything new or difficult. You just get to coast. A comfort zone may feel safe and comfortable, but it can oftentimes leave us feeling bored, apathetic, and disinterested. And I saw this quote not long ago, and it really struck me, that said, don't let your comfort zone become your casket. And I think that's really true. If we are honest about it, hygiene can be very repetitive. And if we're not kind of looking out to see what's new and different and challenging ourselves and growing, and we're just doing the same thing over and over and over, it becomes very stagnant and very boring. And that it's not at all what hygiene can be. It can be much more fulfilling and rewarding for ourselves as the professional, but also for our patients. And, you guys know I tout this all the time, that in a role as important as ours, where we are informing, educating, leading, and empowering patients to choose their own health and wellness by addressing infection and disease, we cannot afford to view our position as mundane, boring, or just a job. If anything, I think our role as hygienist has grown larger, more important, and more exciting than ever before. Really understanding the oral systemic relationship and the responsibilities we carry on that front are imperative to us growing into the depth and breadth of what our career can really be. We often focus on the aspects that frustrate us. We know them well, right? Patient pushback, insurance obstacles, or team culture issues. And do not get me wrong, those things are very real hindrances that we face on the daily. But we have much bigger fish to fry and some really exciting concepts and technologies when it comes to providing an excellent caliber of care and leaving the operatory feeling fulfilled. So the main challenge of this podcast is to ask you to step out of your comfort zone and embrace something new, whether that be adopting a new perio protocol, onboarding a new technology or product, having a hard but crucial conversation, or honing or mastering your clinical skills. For some of you, something just popped into your head that's like, yeah, there's that thing I kind of know I need to do, and I haven't really moved forward. There's something you've been dragging your feet on, and it's time to do that thing. The reality is that new can be painful, clunky, uncertain, and embarrassing. It's absolutely uncomfortable. And let's be honest, most of us hygienists are those A-type perfectionists that want to get everything right the first time and don't want anyone to see us fail. So to try something new or different in front of our team or patients and not having all the answers right off can really make us want to stay on the bench. But I know Lisa would agree with me, we can't be our best selves by staying stagnant, and we certainly can't give our patients what they truly need or deserve. So all of that to say, I wanted to invite Lisa to this conversation to share some of her wins and losses and challenges when it comes to her growth, her stretching, and stepping out of her comfort zone. Not only does she have her own personal stories to share, but also has experience with hygiene students, helping them face and overcome their own fears and barriers. So Lisa, I realize that this is a very loaded and very vulnerable question, but will you kind of walk through your journey and share some of your most uncomfortable moments over the years, that made you uncomfortable and step up to that precipice and step off the cliff, that brought the most growth and satisfaction? Like, what did it look like before? What did it look like on the other side? Was that worth it? And how did you embrace the uncomfortable and get it more comfortable over time?
Well, Charissa, from the very beginning of my journey with dental hygiene, even that far back, 26 years ago, I've always had like a curiosity to learn more, to know more. The oral systemic connection then was really just beginning to be realized, with very limited research in the beginning, as you probably remember. Like many hygienists, though, it doesn't take very long, starting to practice, where you start to wonder if there's something more going on. When we see patient after patient that even with our wonderful care and our recommendations, some simply just do not improve. And then we start to feel frustrated. The patients we see, they look to us for our expertise and they trust our judgments. When you start building relationships with these patients, they look to us. And I had many patients who complied with the personal recommendations that I offered to them. And they were excited to hear when they came back in for their next appointment how their efforts were rewarded. But then, some would come back in and, we do the periodontal evaluation and it's like, the results just weren't sometimes just weren't always there. And so the first thing that pops in our minds as hygienists is that, okay, we need to review their techniques. Let's get out the mirror and let's do some show and tell. Let me watch you do your flossing. Let's watch your brushing. Or maybe they're not doing all that they say they are. When they tell you they're doing something, maybe they're really not, because they don't want to disappoint you. But then also going way back to, when we were initially trained, on that voice on our shoulder telling us that there's no cure for periodontal disease. So it doesn't take long till we start feeling defeated. Because we've run out of things to tell our patients and tell them that they are doing the very best they can, and that's all they can do, which is true. But year after year, I just kept searching, continued to search for something more, because it just felt like the dots weren't connecting. Like, how could this be that somebody who does all the things that we ask them to do, how they couldn't be better? Just what else is going on? There's a piece of the puzzle that's missing. So, we have to take all the required CE courses to keep our license current. And I would choose for myself courses pertaining to periodontal disease. Every year I would choose one to see what new research was there. Surely, after every year I would thought they would have found something. And then every year I'd leave those courses hearing the same thing I had heard the year before. And I started taking some nutrition courses, because I really did feel strongly that this disease we are battling every day had to do something with how we are fueling our bodies, or maybe something we're exposed to. But still, there just weren't any concrete connections. So I just continued to search.
Well,
Yes.
I love that, because I bet that some of our listeners right now are resonating with that feeling of, God, I feel like I'm doing everything I can and I'm not really making an impact. And I feel like, again, like you said, I think we've got to be growth minded. We've got to be willing to look out, because that feels, it's funny because there's that feeling of being uncomfortable on both sides of this camp, right? There's that uncomfortability of, like, I just don't feel comfortable that I'm spending all my time showing patients and telling patients and giving my best, and they come back and there's no improvement. And it then also feels uncomfortable to look out and see what's new that we could be using and think, well, I don't really know a lot about that. And how do I work into that? So I honestly feel like hygiene is kind of uncomfortable regardless of what side you're on. And you just got to make the decision. Do I want to be uncomfortable moving forward and doing something new and different that may potentially help? Or do I want to just sit uncomfortable thinking, oh my gosh, I'm coming in here every day, hitting my head against the wall and nothing's changing? So I think there's almost that challenge of what makes the most sense to you.
That's right, Charissa. I feel like that's a good point. Being, where do you want to be uncomfortable? Because what happens is if we don't continue to search and look for something else, or maybe try to embrace something new, we start getting in a rut. We start to feel what we all know is burnout, from the hour to hour, day to day, same old routine. And then we start becoming complacent in our learning. And pretty soon, here comes those feelings. We've all had them, where we don't even want to do dental hygiene anymore. And so the stress on our bodies, or the stress of the schedule, or whatever is happening, we just, feel like we want to throw our hands up and say, I'm done. And I've been there. So I think that it's very important to, like you said, to realize, where do you want to be uncomfortable with? Are you uncomfortable and miserable in your job and what you're doing? Or are you going to be uncomfortable doing something new? So I will tell you that during the searching for me over the years, trying and searching where I've had to go out of my comfort zone and maybe against what I was taught initially, to learn something new. And all the examples that I could think of to share, I want to point out to you as I talk about each one, that every one of them came with a component of being excited about the challenge and the new possibility, but also deep down inside, very nervous about the unknown. And eventually, just with doing it and perseverance, I gaining a confidence in this new, that you can just roll in to your care that you're already giving your patients. So the first thing I can think of that happened to me in my career, with this feeling of being frustrated and burnt out in what you're doing, and this searching that I was continually doing and really not finding what I was looking for. I just felt like, I'd be onto something and then it would just lead to a dead end. And so just frustrating. So I just continued to seek something more. So when an opportunity came to me to be a clinical adjunct faculty at our local dental hygiene program, I accepted. I thought this would be a way to break up some of the day-to-day that I was doing, and also maybe be exposed to some more current research, how things were happening, on the front lines, to maybe I would be able to hear some more of these connections. I was excited to be part of the training of future hygienist, but I was also very nervous too. This came with a whole nother nervous component outside of clinical, the chair side. Now, I had been practicing at this point for over 15 years and obviously knew how to do dental hygiene, but I quickly realized it's one thing to know how to do dental hygiene, but a very different thing to try to teach someone how to do it. Thankfully, though, I was continually surrounded by many who provided everything I needed to be successful, and they continued to encourage me. I asked a lot of questions, and I leaned on those who were successful in doing this longer than me. Definitely some days I literally felt like faking it till you make it. But eventually gaining more and more confidence in the new position that I was beginning. One thing I've learned, Charissa, is that you have to do something. You have to do something before you can feel comfortable and confident. And that was a concept I was also trying to teach the students I work with. So I think that that's important, that, you got to step out, you got to do it, because you'll never be confident and comfortable if you just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just thinking about the concept of, like I said, hygiene itself is pretty darn uncomfortable when we think about just the day-to-day of patients pushback, right? I don't want those x-rays. Oh, I just came for a cleaning. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about that bleeding and infection. Let me just try flossing a few more times a week and see if that looks better in 6 months. Like all of these conversations that are so uncomfortable knowing what we know, and like, no, that's not going to fix that. A piece of string doesn't kill bacteria. You're already in an infection state. So, thinking about all of the hard and uncomfortable conversations we have every day. There's the whole factor for those of us that have to battle the insurance barrier, and working through that. Like everything that we do in our day, staying within our time parameters, and also being a really competent and ethical and thorough clinician. All of those challenges are very, very uncomfortable. So I think sometimes we think, well, gosh, I'm already uncomfortable doing everything I'm doing. Like I don't have space or room for something new. But to your point, and I love your story in this, you were feeling that burnout. You were feeling that frustration and that uncomfortability. And so what you did was say, hey, what else could I do to help, number one, learn more, because that's going to help me when we don't know what we don't know. That definitely feels uncomfortable. So when we can learn and grow, all of a sudden we feel more confident and we feel more comfortable. So you looked out to say, hey, what else is out there? And finding this opportunity at the school to help teach and learn. I know for me, when I have the opportunity to coach other hygienists through our mastermind, that helps me grow. It creates an accountability in me. Like I'm not going to tell somebody else to do something I'm not doing. So there's that accountability factor, but there's also getting to hear what other people are doing. And like you said, having that mentor of someone who's done it longer and has some experience, it just brings a lot more safety in it, and being able to say, hey, somebody else has done that and they succeeded. I can do that too. So I love that story. And I know that was not the end for you of learning and growing. So tell us something else that really impacted you in this way.
So I guess another time that I can remember feeling uncomfortable was whenever I became certified with a laser. So with the encouragement of my doctor, I became laser certified. He told all three of the hygienists at the time that he would sign us up for a laser course, and he wanted us to learn more about using laser. So we went to get laser certified, and then trying to understand the laser, to use it, first of all, and then be able to talk to patients about it was definitely a bit uncomfortable. I was not 100% confident in my skills or the ability to talk to patients about it, to sell it, because these patients trusted me and my judgment and my recommendations. But after I obtained my certification, I had to start implementing this new concept. There was some really good information given during my course. And so those of you who either use a laser already or maybe are thinking about using a laser, or you can in your state, I would definitely encourage you to use this one thing to maybe step out of your comfort zone if you haven't already. But during the course, it gave some really good information. And so it sort of feeding that desire that I was having for searching for something new. So I was really excited that I might have found something a tool that could possibly help my patients. And I was excited to use it, very excited, but I was going to use this laser underneath someone's gums, a laser. So honestly, I was very nervous the first time I used it on a patient. And then just hoping when they came back the next time that there would be some improvement that would help me to become even more confident, to see, did this work? Am I feeling better about using it, using the techniques, and is it actually making a difference for my patients? I even created a spreadsheet. This is what a nerd I am sometimes. I created a spreadsheet that had all the patients, what they had and what their level of periodontal disease was, and then how they were progressing. I did that for a while so that I could track the progress, because I needed to feel more confident about it. But thankfully, as the patients returned, I could see that the laser was a wonderful tool in my possession to help my patients. And with time, it became more natural to talk about this new thing. In the beginning, when I first started using, I felt like I needed to go in like all this great detail about the laser with my patients, because I felt like I needed to give them all this information so that they would accept it. But as time went on, I became more confident with it. I felt like I didn't need to over-explain it all. I could, just give them the basic information about what, kind of basically what we're going to be doing, and that, what my goal is by using this, and what successes we had had with other patients. And so I didn't really need to go into this great detail about, all this information about the lasers. They trusted my judgment. And I even had patients eventually come back in and say they just wanted the laser at every hygiene appointment, because they could feel the difference whenever we used it versus when we weren't using it. So that makes your confidence even more.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, on this topic, I'm extremely jealous because in Georgia, I can't. I'm always jealous of laser states and laser hygienists. But I want to just highlight something you just said that resonated with me and that's really important. Because I think the majority of hygienists are, again, very A-type. We want to know all the reasons why. We want to know all the details. We want to have our ducks in a row, because what if a patient asks X, Y, or Z? We want to have all the answers. And we do tend to kind of overdo it and overeducate sometimes with something new, because we have that almost fear, like, hey, if I don't tell them enough, they're not going to understand this. They're not going to move forward. And I think that's a super important point, because the reality is we're never going to know all the things. We're never going to have all of our ducks in a row. So we can let ourselves off the hook on that front and rest in the fact that, like you said, patients come to us for our expertise. And because they trust us, and because they know, hey, I've been seeing her, I know she knows what she's doing. So we kind of need to let ourselves off the hook as we are thinking towards something new and uncomfortable. And just like you said, figure out, and this is something that I work toward for myself, because just like you, I want to know all the things. And so when I create verbiage around new things for our team, I sit down and I do write out the science for my own self of like, what does this do? How does this work? And then I figure out how to condense that down to just a very basic synopsis for the patient. And so I think that was just a really great point of figuring out, yes, I know that we as hygienists, we want to know all the details. Our patients don't need all of that. So let yourself off the hook on that front.
Exactly. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off of you, feeling like you have to do it. And then you always have the time component in your appointments. And so we're, always racing the clock, and you start not doing something because you realize I don't have time to do this. I just don't have time, and it just feels like it's going to be more stressful. So I think the verbiage is very good. Finding, a concise verbiage on each thing so that you're not feeling like you're taking all this time and then feeling more stressed because of the schedule. That we always have to try to, racing the clock all the time. Definitely, I think that is important. But I think with confidence too comes the ability to not feel like you have to do as much explaining.
Right.
One other thing that whenever I think about being uncomfortable that I have encountered through the years is consulting companies. And so I just say that word, and people just more, hygienists or even, anybody in the dental office just, start to cringe. You're like, and the reason why for that cringing is exactly what we're talking about right here. Change is uncomfortable. And when a new consulting company comes in, there's a good chance something's going to change, good or bad. Protocols and the flow of your day can be disrupted, and it send us out of our comfort zone, or possibly out of the rut that we're in. And perhaps the reason we're feeling that feeling of burnout is because we're in a rut. We're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so if you have an opportunity, if your doctor, your practice has hired a consulting company, try to just change your mindset and think about what you can gain from this, because all of the consulting companies that I've worked with, although uncomfortable in their own ways, if I am completely honest, there is something that was gained from each experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And I feel like whenever we traverse something that was hard, I mean, it feels really uncomfortable and icky and all of that on the front side. But if we're honest and we really think it all through, when you look at it, hindsight's 2020, when you look back, there's almost this feeling of accomplishment. Like, that was hard and I didn't like it and I didn't want to do it. I always say I felt that way with the iTero. And I'm training a new hygienist in our practice right now, and she just was using it for the first time the other day, and she's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I know. It's super weird that, we don't just pick it up immediately, but I will say now it's one of my favorite tools for educating, and I love it. So, there's that joy of, hey, I was able to accomplish something and do something, but there's also like, hey, now I have something really cool and exciting to do. So that's a great example of that.
Yes, yes, I agree. I just recently learned how to use a scanner as well. And it was, I felt like you said before, just really clunky. And, it took me forever to do the first one because I'm, trying to get all of it just perfect. But it is, again, just trying to learn something new, and then figuring out how you can use it as a tool to, educate your patients. I love that. I'm going to have to look, now that I've learned how to do that, I need to learn how I can utilize the scanner even more with the patients. So thinking of other times when I initially felt uncomfortable is when our office onboarded PerioProtect. It brought, again, some of the same feelings about being excited and nervous, excited about something new that could benefit my patients. But at the same time, this particular thing came with a greater cost for the patients. Yes. So how was I going to talk to my patients about this new concept? But it made sense. It's placing a medicament below the gum line in custom trays with the patient's pocket depths, and then putting the medicament there for the time needed to kill those pathogens that cause inflammation and disease in the mouth. And so who was I to decide that patients wouldn't want this? So it was just my place to educate them and to let them know that this product was available, and then let them decide. But what I learned by doing this, by having those conversations, was that it fit right in with the flow of the appointment. Using the information that we already gather from all the assessments that we do, and formulating a treatment plan, and then along with the home care recommendations, it was easy to see that some patients could really benefit from PerioProtect. So it just became part of the conversation. It was another tool that we had to possibly to help them. It was uncomfortable, yes, initially, but to my surprise, many patients accepted this recommendation because they could also understand the concept and how it could be beneficial. So here again, being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I had those same challenges because I'm a big proponent and user in our practice of Perio Protect. So I totally get that because you're right. There's a big dollar amount attached to that some of us have to get through some fear of having those conversations and that uncomfortable conversation. But just like everything else we're talking about, once you've done it and once you've seen a couple of patients and the outcome of what those trays can do, now you feel much more confident about it. You know what it's capable of. And I love your point about who are you to just assume they wouldn't want that. We have got to take the patient's wallet or, purse out of our brain because we don't know what their situation is. We don't know what they value and what their finances look like. All we can do is say, hey, I see this issue for you, and we have a couple of options for solutions. What makes the most sense to you? Because when we don't present that, we are making the choice for them. And that's a really important thing for us to think through. We oftentimes, out of fear, might not talk about things that we know could really help. But that's non-productive for the practice and it's non-productive for our patients. So that's a great point, and I love that. And I felt the same feelings.
Yes. So I was really surprised by Perio Protect about the amount of patients who accepted it. So there again, like you said, and you start seeing patients improving, then now it's more comfortable
Yeah.
to recommend it. And now all of a sudden, you place the value on there when you start talking to your patients about how other patients have improved. This is what I have seen with my other patients. And so now it becomes really easy to talk about. But first you have to do it. You have to step out. You have to do it. That confidence is not going to come unless we do. So at one of our hygiene meetings a few years ago, I guess now, the doctor we worked for encouraged us to listen to the Bulletproof podcast. And so I hadn't heard of it. So I looked it up and I started listening, and I was immediately intrigued by the very practical information given. And so then I joined the Mighty Network so that I could hear more. And I was immediately so excited. I might just have found others like me, those people who are always searching, other hygienists that looking for connections and sharing new research and technologies that would help my patients to improve not only orally, but could also affect their overall health. So my search for oral systemic connections, it never stopped. I was always still intrigued by all the research coming out with oral systemic connections and these newer ideas for treatment. And I just continued to search. And I was so excited when I was able to be a part of the mastermind group that is offered through Bulletproof, where hygienists across the country could brainstorm about this newest research, treatment protocols, verbiage, and practical solutions to many common roadblocks in our day-to-day. And listening to others who were also embracing these changes in our profession was so encouraging. I think that is key. You have to continue to surround yourself with others who are growth minded. It will motivate you and inspire you. It kind of makes me think of an old proverb that iron sharpens iron. And so one person sharpens another, Proverbs 27:17. And it was actually you, Charissa, that told me about AOSH. Like what? American Academy of Oral Systemic Health. I didn't even know that they existed. So I immediately, whenever you told me about it, I got online and I started looking up their website, and I was like, oh my goodness. Once I joined, I discovered that there was so much new information available to show the connections I search for between oral health and the whole body. And there is this movement happening in our profession that is so exciting, but we have to choose to embrace it. So I have to say that I just was almost giddy whenever I found Bulletproof, other hygienists who were also searching, and also AOSH, who was pushing this movement of of elevating our profession. And I just was so excited about that.
I love that. And you know me, I'm a fellow dental nerd and geek over all of this. So I remember you and I had a phone conversation we were, in the mastermind group together, and you called and said, hey, I'm so interested in this. I'm just not finding a lot of information and I'm feeling a little burned out. And I said, oh my gosh, you have to find AASH. It's like this fire hose of information of everything you're looking for. And for me, I always say that was what set me on fire as well, is when AASH first started. I was one of the founding members. And the more I learned and saw, like, you can't unsee those things. And it's not just, what I love about AASH is it's not just, hey, telling you, hey, these are the connections, but it's also showing you a lot of really great treatments and research and findings and solutions. So, you can really go down the rabbit hole there. But it's such a great community of people who are also, like you said, like-minded and want to do the best thing they can do and are always looking out for something new and different.
Yes, I love that. It's for sure a fire hose. And so sometimes, you can only process so much at a
Yep.
time. So it's like, oh my goodness, there's just so much, but it's exciting because we, can continue to embrace all the new things coming out and learn more. And I just think it really will, like you said, ignite a new passion in you for what we can offer to our patients.
Yeah, well, and I want to say on that front of new, and I know AOSH is a big proponent of this as well, and I keep touting this is where hygiene is going, is I wanted us to talk about salivary testing because you and I both have been doing that in our practices. And again, talk about uncomfortability for how do we do this and how do I find time to do this and what do I do with these results and how do I talk to a patient about it? Like, there is a lot of uncomfortable in salivary testing, but I'm telling you guys, it's getting easier and easier. There are more and more companies embracing this. There are more and more options. But talk to me, Lisa, because now at this point, like, I'm all in. I can't not use salivary testing. So talk to me about your journey with that.
Yeah, so when I first learned about salivary testing, it was actually through Mastermind. You had talked about it. We had done one of our calls on salivary testing, and I was again, like, very, very curious. It's like, what a concept, that we could actually test the saliva for periodontal pathogens that plague our patients. What? It was not something that we were initially taught. So I was also very skeptical. So I started the process of learning all I could for the testing and trying to formulate a plan to bring it into practice. Talked to my doctor about it, said, there's some other people doing this in the mastermind group that are working through it, and I'm excited about this. And he's like, let's get it going. So learn all you can about it. So I was doing that and trying to figure a way to bring it into practice. Once again, very excited but also nervous to step out of that comfort zone to talk to my patients about it. And then, we always have that time thing on our mind about trying to stay on schedule. But what I found that many patients were very receptive to it. Whenever I would say we can take a salivary sample to test the pathogens that are, driving this condition that I see in your mouth, they would kind of, be very wanted to hear more about it. Most patients were like, tell me more about this, because they were used to having other tests done at doctors' offices to determine levels of cholesterol or hormones or et cetera, any other types of bacteria that might be causing infections in their body. So it made sense that dentistry could also have an objective test to tell us what pathogens are present in the saliva. So, so I started talking to patients about it, and it just really wasn't as scary as what I had anticipated. But then when the results came in, our team had to learn how to read and make recommendations with patients. So this was, again, very trying to learn how to read a test like that. We haven't done that before. And what does that mean? And what do we need to recommend based on that? And I will tell you honestly that some days we had victories and some days we were needing reassurance. And I say that by our hygiene team. We came together and we were doing this together. And so we could bounce it off of each other and be able to try to get a deeper understanding of what these results meant for our patients. But at the end of the day, It was about the patient and how we are not only educating and treating oral disease and infection, but we are preventing and we are treating our patients' whole body health. I feel like we have to start talking about the whole body health more. We know, as hygienists, that the mouth is part of the body, but so many don't realize that the pathogens that cause inflammation in the mouth are also leaving the mouth and causing inflammation and disease elsewhere. So eventually, hopefully soon, I hope to see that there will be more collaboration happening with dentistry and medicine.
Preach it, sister.
Yes.
Yes, all day long. I mean, I've been telling my patients, the mouth is the gateway to the rest of the body. What's happening here is happening everywhere. So I think what a cool opportunity for us to identify what is driving that and make sure that we are eradicating those oral pathogens. I mean, the stats are coming out now that 50% of heart attack and stroke are triggered by an oral pathogen. That is frightening. So yes, I'm touting that we all need to get on board with this, because this is definitely the future of hygiene, current and future.
Yeah, and I'll say too that, okay, so my goal when I started doing salivary testing was, okay, so you have those patients we talked about before that are doing all the things and still they have, a bleeding index, or still they have pocketing and they're doing everything you ask them to do, and you're still seeing, why do we still have a bleeding index? And so doing the salivary testing, I thought, okay, so we're just gonna do this maybe on a select amount of patients, these patients that presenting a certain way. I'm gonna offer salivary testing to them and just see what happens. And I think what made it concrete for me, and you've been doing this longer than me, Charissa, but what made it concrete for me was that whenever those patients did the protocol for salivary testing, and whenever they came back in for their next periodontal evaluation, 3 months, 6 months, or even a year later, came back and we did that periodontal evaluation, and oh my goodness, the bleeding index was either gone or way greatly reduced, and those pocket depths were coming down. And it's like, okay, that's where it is. It's about the bacteria. It's about, what's driving this disease. And we were actually helping them overall. It wasn't just, some, you know, this very obscure thing that we couldn't put our hands on or see. These readings were actually changing for people who were doing the protocols.
Yeah, and I have two just really important points that I want to make on this. One is that if you see bleeding and inflammation, I mean, 99% of the time, you got some bugs hanging out. I've done enough testing now to know, like, I see it and I'm like, oh, we got something. I actually had a patient the other day who she had bleeding, she had inflammation. We did the testing, it came back and she was just FN in the green. She actually didn't have anything really awful going on, but she had just experienced COVID a few months earlier and then had salmonella poisoning. So for her, I said, great news. We don't need to incorporate any kind of antibiotics or anything really harsh. I think this is just your immune system still recovering from everything that you went through. Let's just do a thorough disruption and really focus in on home care and see what we get. I think this is still an immune system issue. But for, like I said, 99.9% of the rest of the patients, if I have a hunch and I salivary test, there is some stuff happening there. And to that point, for so many years, with us not being able to see that and not knowing, think of the bacteremia that we are creating at every single appointment, that we are breaking up to the base of that biofilm, breaking that wide open, and all of that is going into the bloodstream. So I just think from a true wellness standpoint of health and treating our patients appropriately and ethically, we need to know what we're up against before we get going.
Yes, absolutely. I love salivary testing. And like you said before, after you start learning in AOSH and you start doing salivary tests, there's some things you just can't unknow. You can't unsee. And I think one time, and I can't remember when it was, that you mentioned to me that sometimes when you're cleaning or you're probing or whatever, and you see that gush of bleeding happening, you're like, well, there's where they are. Now that you've done the salivary testing and they're high on certain levels, and you get in their mouth and you can see that this place is, really inflamed and it's bleeding very easily, that's probably where they are. So it kind of just kind of makes it all come full circle for me.
Yes.
So this just kind of, capstoning, my uncomfortable experiences. I feel like this year, for me, even more so, I've been just living out of my comfort zone. I've taken even more leaps this year. I was given an opportunity to add a lecture course at the hygiene program I'm part of. I also left a long-term practice and started at a newly opened practice. I was also given the opportunity to assist a very amazing instructor in laser certification courses. And then I'm doing this podcast, which would be my first. So with the help and encouragement of more experienced professors of where I was already at, I said yes to the lecture course. And then I also said yes when I was asked to assist in laser certification courses. Both of those things were definitely out of my comfort zone. Again, feeling excited and for the challenge, and nervous also for the unknown of, standing in front of a classroom and doing a lecture, was something new for me. I had worked with students one-on-one, with their skills before, but not actually presenting a lecture content. And so these things were definitely new for me, but it was exciting. But I think, it was good for me. It helped me to grow. Leaving the practice that I had been with for 24 years was very difficult. To leave that comfort zone where you know your patients, your team, the protocols, it's very comfortable. And then to start at a very brand new practice is challenging. And
Yeah.
so brand new practice, new team to mesh with, new patients, new protocols, philosophies. There were many reasons for me to stay right where I was, but then there were also reasons to embrace change and move to new opportunities. And Charissa, I'm definitely learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable, especially right now. And doing this podcast is right along those same lines. It's exciting, but it was also a little scary. So, but I think that as students, we feel this whenever we can all remember back to when we were desperately trying to learn all that we needed to know to earn our title of RDH. We were excited and determined, yet some days we were unsure and lacking confidence. I see that even with students today. There are some students who are eager to learn more and take their skills to the next level. And then there are some who only do what they need to do to pass a concept. Most of us are, like you said, those type A personality hygienists who don't like to fail. So to avoid failure, oftentimes what we do is we just stay parked right there in our comfort zones. I do try to take opportunities with the students to encourage light bulb moments, to help them cultivate a passion for our profession and embrace this new and exciting opportunities. I want them to know in their core, before they launch their career, that they are not just tooth cleaners. They are healthcare providers who can help save lives.
Oh, I love that you are teaching that from the beginning. We are not tooth janitors.
They
Again, preach it.
Yes, the students in the lecture class that I'm teaching this semester, they probably heard me say that over and over again because I've had the opportunity to have some guest speakers come in to talk about these new concepts. I had someone come in to talk about salivary testing to the new students. I had someone come in and talk about laser and then also getting their certification before they graduate. So I'm getting them excited about getting out of the normal protocols and assessments that you do, and what else is available. And so I just keep telling them over and over and over again, because I want that in their head before they leave, that they're not just tooth janitors. I heard someone say recently, if you are given an opportunity, take it. Oftentimes someone else sees a talent in you that you've covered. And if you just will embrace it, you will grow. If you are stagnant and unhappy in what you're currently doing, seek growth and opportunity to learn. There are so many exciting things happening with our profession. And if we don't embrace those, we will still be in the same spot 5 years from now, still unhappy and stagnant.
So Lisa, I agree so much with this sentiment. By the way, you crushed the podcast thing. Thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone. I have to tell our listeners this has been a few months in the coming, because when I first asked, Lisa was like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "You got this. This is an easy conversation talking about what you love." And so you crushed it. And again, on the other side of it, was it as scary as you thought it would be?
It really isn't. It really is. It wasn't so
Yeah.
bad.
Perfect. So the responsibilities we carry as hygienists, as you guys know, I talk about it all the time. They're huge, and our work truly has the potential to be life-saving. So if we're feeling bored, burned out, like Lisa said, if we're feeling apathetic or just completely, constantly frustrated, we can't give out of that place. And if you haven't listened to the conversation I had with Dr. Taryn McCarthy, I'd go back and listen to that. That was such a great episode. Her concept is, when you feel good, you do good. And so if you're not feeling good about what you're doing on the daily, it's time to look around. Like Lisa said, look at Bulletproof Hygiene, look into AOSH, look at those mentors around you, those hygienists in your practice that have been doing it longer, that things just seem easy for them, or the conversations just flow. Dig in and ask them to help. That's what we are here for. This is a community. Our goal is to empower our patients to own their health and take the necessary steps to obtain it. And we can't empower others if we aren't feeling empowered ourselves. Gaining confidence, knowledge, competence, and empowerment are all a process of growth, and it all happens outside of our comfort zones. So I hope this podcast has been a catalyst for any of you listeners that have gotten a little complacent or stagnant, or that you've just been comfortable for too long. Guys, let's make it exciting again. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It's time to seek some growth and change. And there are too many really cool opportunities in the hygiene world to miss out. So thank you for investing in yourself today to take the time to listen to this conversation. Come join us on the Mighty Network if you haven't already. Tell us what do you want to know? Where are you trying to grow? What have you done that's been a great win, that's changed your outlook and changed your profession? We need to have these conversations. So thank you, everyone. Lisa, thank you so much for your time and for stepping out of your comfort zone. I really appreciate it. And everyone, have a wonderful month of practice, and come see us. Come see us at the summit. Hope everyone is doing well. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.